Listen to me closely, because if you click away now, you will miss the one truth that could completely shift the way you understand desire, power, and human psychology. People think they already know this topic. They think it's simple, predictable, surface level. But what I'm about to say will challenge what you thought you understood about why younger women are drawn to older men, and why the moment she says certain words, everything changes, not because of lust, not because of fantasy, but because she has reached a point of clarity about herself that nobody warned you about. Stay with me. Because this isn't a conversation about age. This is a conversation about energy, identity, and the kind of presence that rewires a woman's emotional reality. And once you hear it, you won't be able to unhear it. You'll start recognizing it everywhere, in relationships you've seen, in situations you've lived, even in choices you didn't understand about yourself or others. Most people sleepwalk through these dynamics without ever questioning them. They react, they judge, they gossip, but they don't understand the psychology behind it. They've never been taught the why, the how, the deeper pattern that connects confidence, maturity, and emotional grounding to attraction. That's why this message is going to feel uncomfortable, maybe even confronting, but it will also feel like truth, because it is truth. So before you scroll, pause, breathe, and ask yourself a simple question. What if the real reason younger women desire older men has nothing to do with age and everything to do with a level of masculine awareness most men never master in their entire lives? If you're ready to hear that answer, the real answer, then stay exactly where you are. What comes next will explain everything you've always sensed but never had the words for. When a younger woman gravitates toward an older man, people always jump to the most shallow explanations because it's easier to judge than to understand. But if you really listen to what she's saying beneath the surface, you'll hear something far more profound. She's not choosing age. She's choosing emotional stability. She's choosing a certain texture of masculinity that has become rare in this generation. A calm, steady psychological presence that allows her to breathe without the constant fear of being misunderstood, dismissed, or emotionally mishandled. It's not that she wants someone with more years, it's that she wants someone who has actually learned from those years. Most men don't realize how deeply a woman feels the emotional climate of a man. His energy isn't background noise, it's the entire atmosphere she has to exist in. If he's reactive, she has to brace herself. If he's insecure, she has to defend herself. If he's confused, she has to guide herself. But when she stands in front of a man whose spirit is settled, whose mind isn't scattered, whose emotions aren't swinging all over the place, she experiences something she may not have felt in a long time: peace. And that peace makes her safe enough to be vulnerable, soft, expressive, feminine. Younger women don't wake up thinking, I want an older man. They wake up wanting clarity, consistency, confidence, and safety. And often, older men embody these traits because life has humbled them enough to grow past childish impulses. They've broken down their egos. They've survived mistakes. They've learned to regulate their emotions instead of projecting them. The calm they carry isn't accidental, it's earned, and that makes it powerful. When a woman encounters that energy, it's like stepping out of noise into silence. She feels the difference instantly. The truth is, younger men usually have the physical energy, but older men have the emotional gravity. Younger men often operate from impulse, from proving themselves, from trying to impress. But an older man has already faced himself. He's already confronted his weaknesses. He doesn't need to validate himself by controlling a woman, dominating conversations, or proving he's the man. He knows who he is, and that self-awareness creates a stability she can lean into. Women are intuitive by nature. Their bodies react to emotional energy faster than their minds do. So, when she finds a man who doesn't shake her emotionally, who doesn't bring chaos, who doesn't make her feel responsible for managing his moods. She feels a pull toward him that surprises even her. This isn't about age. It's about evolution. Some men evolve early, some never evolve at all. But the kind of man a younger woman is drawn to is the one who has processed his pain instead of avoiding it, who has understood his mistakes instead of repeating them, who has learned to think before reacting, and who carries himself with an internal discipline that makes her feel emotionally protected without him even needing to say a word. His stability is not something he performs, it's who he has become. A younger woman often deals with men who think leadership is about control, but an older man understands leadership is about composure. He knows how to navigate conflict without attacking. He knows how to listen without turning defensive. His presence isn't forceful, it's reassuring. And when she feels that, something inside her relaxes in a way she can't fake. Emotional safety is the most underrated form of attraction, yet it's the most powerful. A woman's desire doesn't awaken from compliments, gifts, or superficial charm. It awakens when her nervous system feels safe near a man. And emotional maturity is what creates that safety. The irony is that society tries to shame women for this preference, as if being drawn to stability is something childish. But in reality, it's deeply intelligent. It's instinctive, it's psychological. She's choosing a man who won't weaponize her vulnerability. She's choosing a man who won't turn emotional intimacy into a battlefield. She's choosing a man whose silence doesn't mean emotional withdrawal, but emotional awareness. She's choosing someone who won't crumble when pressure rises, who won't run when conversations get real, who won't sabotage connection because of unhealed wounds. A man who masters emotional stability becomes magnetic without trying. His existence speaks louder than another man's performance. This stability becomes a signal to her subconscious mind that says, "You can trust here." And trust is the foundation of desire. When a younger woman says she wants to be with an older man, she's expressing that she wants that trust, that groundedness, that emotional environment where she doesn't have to protect herself every second. She wants the luxury of relaxing in her femininity without being punished for it. People misunderstand this because they oversimplify women. They think women choose based on money, status, attention, or some cliché narrative. But the truth is, women choose based on emotional reality. They choose the men who make their internal world feel balanced. She knows that the wrong man can drain her spirit, distort her self-worth, and disrupt her direction. But the right man can amplify her softness, elevate her strength, and help her grow into the best version of herself. That's what emotional stability does. It doesn't overpower her, it empowers her. And here's something men rarely admit. Emotional maturity is one of the most masculine things a man can develop. It takes strength to stay calm, patience to listen, wisdom to understand, and discipline to respond with intention instead of impulse. The older man she chooses isn't just older, he's refined. He's sharpened. He's been shaped by life in ways that made him better instead of bitter. She feels that in his energy. She senses it in how he moves. She hears it in how he speaks. And once she feels that stability, going back to emotional immaturity becomes impossible. So when she chooses him, it's not a romantic cliché. It's a psychological alignment. It's her recognizing a man who isn't at war with himself, because a man who has peace within himself can give peace to a woman. And in a world where everyone is rushing, competing, comparing, and collapsing under their own insecurities, a man who carries emotional stability becomes the rarest, most compelling presence of all. And the truth is simple: women don't chase age. They chase the emotional strength they feel safe surrendering to. When she chooses stability, she's choosing the kind of man who can hold her heart without dropping it. Because at the end of the day, emotional maturity isn't about being older. It's about being ready, and most men are not ready. When a younger woman feels drawn to an older man, People like to reduce it to something shallow because it's easier to mock what you don't understand. But the truth is, her attraction isn't rooted in something as flimsy as age, it's rooted in depth. And depth is something you cannot fake, cannot borrow, cannot pretend to have. Depth is carved into a man through time, through choices, through pain, through reflection. A younger woman is not choosing a man because he is older. She's choosing him because he carries layers that younger men often haven't developed yet. She wants depth because depth makes her feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that surface-level interactions never can. You have to understand something fundamental about feminine psychology. Women don't attach to entertainment, they attach to meaning. They don't crave temporary excitement, they crave emotional resonance. A younger man may bring energy, spontaneity, and thrill, but thrill fades, energy shifts, excitement dies, and she is drawn to the man who understands life beyond the superficial level. The man who listens to understand, not to respond, who speaks with intention, not with ego, who sees beyond her appearance and understands the emotional reality behind her eyes. This is why a younger woman finds herself leaning into conversations with an older man. He carries an emotional vocabulary she is starving to hear. He has learned, over time, that connection is not built on impressing someone, but on understanding them. And understanding requires depth, the ability to recognize patterns, to read energy, to sense when something is off even when her words are perfectly composed. Younger men often miss this because they're busy reacting. Older men catch it because they've lived it. And that depth shows up in how he carries himself. A woman can feel it in his patience. She notices it in the way he doesn't rush her, doesn't push her, doesn't treat the interaction like a competition. His presence feels spacious. She can breathe around him. She doesn't feel the need to perform or pretend. She doesn't feel the pressure to shrink or exaggerate. Depth creates comfort. Depth creates trust. Depth creates desire. When she chooses depth, she is choosing a man who has explored himself enough to explore her. A man who has asked himself difficult questions, confronted uncomfortable truths, and walked through emotional storms without letting them destroy him. That kind of man doesn't fear intensity. He understands it. He doesn't judge emotion. He respects it. He doesn't run from vulnerability. He reciprocates it. These qualities create the kind of intimacy that feels rare, intoxicating, and grounding all at once. A younger woman isn't impressed by an older man because of what he has, she's impressed by what he is. A man who has lived, a man who has reflected, a man who has learned. And that learning has shaped him into someone who moves with intention instead of impulse. Someone who is more aware than reactive. Someone who can sit with discomfort instead of exploding from it. Someone who can hold a conversation without turning it into a battlefield. Someone who knows the difference between attention and presence, and chooses presence. Presence is the fuel of depth, and a woman feels it instantly. Presence is the way he looks at her, not to evaluate her, but to understand her. Presence is the way he listens, not waiting for his turn to speak, but absorbing her words fully. Presence is the way he answers, thinking before he talks instead of talking before he thinks. Presence is the way he shows up, not inconsistently and carelessly, but with grounded, unshakable steadiness. This is the kind of depth that makes a woman open up in ways she didn't expect. It pulls her into emotional honesty. It makes her share more than she planned. It makes her trust without trying. She feels emotionally safe because the depth he carries doesn't pressure her, it invites her. And she accepts that invitation naturally because every part of her recognizes the difference between someone who wants to impress her and someone who wants to understand her. Younger men often mistake loudness for strength. Older men know that real strength is quiet. Real strength is controlled. Real strength is aware. Depth gives a man this kind of strength. Emotional depth gives him the ability to stay grounded when things get intense, to think clearly when emotions rise, to navigate conflict without turning it into chaos. Women crave that not because they want to be dominated, but because they want to feel protected emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That kind of protection comes from depth, not muscles, not money, not bravado. Depth also shows up in how he values time. A man with depth has stopped wasting energy on meaningless interactions, pointless arguments, ego-driven games. He has learned that what makes a connection powerful isn't how exciting it looks, but how true it feels. And when she feels that truth in him, she feels safe letting her guard down. She can be soft without being judged. She can be expressive without being dismissed. She can be imperfect without being punished. This is why her desire grows. Not because he is older, but because he is different. Because his depth makes her feel understood in ways she hasn't experienced before. And feeling understood is the foundation of attraction for a woman. Once a woman feels emotionally understood, physical attraction follows naturally. Emotional resonance creates physical desire, not the other way around. A woman doesn't choose depth because it's romantic. She chooses it because it's rare. And rare things have value. Rare men become unforgettable. Rare energy becomes addictive. Rare depth becomes irresistible. So when she gravitates toward an older man, she isn't looking for age. She's looking for the depth that age often creates. The depth that allows her to be herself without fear. The depth that makes connection feel effortless. The depth that transforms intimacy from something physical into something psychological, emotional, spiritual. That is what she's chasing. That is what she's choosing. And that is what makes the difference. Because at the end of the day, surface level men give excitement, but deep men give meaning. And meaning is what she will choose every time. When a younger woman says she wants to be intimate with an older man, most people misinterpret her completely. They assume she's talking about physical attraction, as if desire begins in the body. But everything about feminine desire starts in the mind. It starts in trust. It starts in safety. And when she is drawn to an older man, she is not saying, "I want his body." She is saying, "I feel safe surrendering to his presence." That distinction is everything. Women don't surrender to men they don't trust. They don't open up to men who make them question their stability. They don't allow intimacy with men who don't understand emotional responsibility. Her attraction is not a reaction to age. It is a response to security. Younger women often move through a world where trust has been broken repeatedly. Promises were made lightly. Emotions were mishandled. Vulnerability was punished. So when she encounters a man whose energy doesn't trigger her defenses, something inside her shifts. She pays attention. She observes how he reacts under pressure, how he speaks when he's frustrated, how he listens when she's emotional. She notices the difference between a man who desires her and a man who can hold her. Holding her doesn't mean controlling her. It means creating an emotional environment where she can let go. And that kind of environment is rare. Women feel trust before they feel attraction. They feel stability before they feel desire. They feel emotional presence before they feel physical pull. This is why she gravitates toward the man who doesn't rush her, doesn't push her, doesn't try to impress her. She gravitates toward the man who makes her feel calm. Calm is not boring. Calm is safe. Calm is grounding. Calm is the reason she says yes without second, guessing what it might cost her emotionally. An older man has often developed this calm not because of age, but because of experience. He has lived through enough emotional storms to understand how to regulate himself. He knows how to respond instead of react. He knows how to hold space for someone else without collapsing into insecurity. A younger woman senses this immediately. When she speaks, he listens without interrupting. When she cries, he doesn't panic. When she expresses confusion, he doesn't dismiss her. These responses communicate safety at a level deeper than logic. She feels it in her body. Her nervous system relaxes. Her guard lowers. Her mind becomes present. This is what makes her desire him, Not age, not status, not appearance, but the trust he creates effortlessly. People underestimate the role trust plays in desire for a woman. A man may become physically attracted through sight, but a woman becomes physically attracted through emotional alignment. Once she trusts him, once she feels understood by him, once she feels emotionally safe near him, desire awakens naturally. It's not forced. It's not manipulated. It's not created through charm. It's created through connection, and connection is born from trust. Younger men often think that confidence is about being loud or dominant. But women feel confidence through consistency. They feel confidence when a man can remain steady. They feel confidence when he doesn't weaponize her vulnerability. They feel confidence when he doesn't turn emotional conversations into power struggles. Trust is built in the moments where he could lose control but chooses not to. Trust is built in the moments where he could judge her but chooses understanding instead. Trust is built in the moments where he could run but chooses to stay. This is why she says she wants him, because she can trust the way he handles her truth. She doesn't fear opening up. She doesn't fear being misunderstood. The older man's emotional maturity makes her feel protected, not restricted. It allows her to express herself fully without fear of consequences, and that level of freedom creates desire. Emotional freedom is the foundation of feminine longing. When she feels free around a man, her desire grows without resistance. A younger woman also recognizes that an emotionally safe man won't misuse her vulnerability. He won't manipulate her with it. He won't diminish her feelings. He won't throw her past back at her during conflict. This emotional integrity is rare, and she feels it immediately. It's not about what he says. It's about who he becomes in the moments that matter. Trust is not about grand gestures. It's about consistent emotional behavior, and intimacy is the natural result of that trust. When she says she wants to be with him, she's choosing a man whose presence feels like emotional gravity. He grounds her. He steadies her. He brings her into a state where she feels safe being fully feminine, expressive, soft, intuitive, emotional, receptive. A woman cannot be feminine with a man who is emotionally unpredictable. She cannot relax around a man she doesn't trust. She cannot connect deeply with a man who is shallow. Trust is the soil where desire grows, and here is where most people misunderstand her completely. She isn't drawn to him because she wants to escape responsibility. She's drawn to him because she wants a partner who understands responsibility, emotional responsibility, psychological responsibility, relational responsibility. She wants someone who honors her vulnerability with sincerity, someone who understands that intimacy is not a game, but a connection that requires maturity. Trust transforms the way she desires him. It shifts intimacy from something physical to something emotional, psychological, spiritual. She doesn't just want to be touched. She wants to be understood. She doesn't just want closeness. She wants connection. She doesn't just want attention. She wants presence. And presence is the language of the emotionally safe man. When she chooses him, she's choosing a man who makes intimacy feel natural, not dangerous. A man who makes vulnerability feel meaningful, not frightening. A man who makes connection feel grounding, not risky. She chooses him because her heart can rest in his hands without fear of being dropped. So when she says she wants him, she's not choosing age, she's choosing emotional safety. Because at the end of the day, a woman's desire is unlocked not by the man she sees, but by the man she trusts. And a man who creates trust becomes a man she wants, fully, deeply, willingly. That is the truth most people will never understand. When a younger woman chooses an older man, people love to oversimplify it, as if her choice has anything to do with age alone. But if you listen closely to her words, if you pay attention to the subtle signals she gives, you'll understand something much more profound. She is responding to masculine evolution. She is responding to a man who has grown past ego, past insecurity, past emotional instability. She is responding to the kind of masculine presence that cannot be faked or replicated by someone who hasn't lived, reflected, and transformed. And that evolution is what creates the magnetism she feels. A lot of men don't realize this, but women are psychologically drawn to men who have outgrown themselves. Not men who pretend to be strong, but men whose strength is quiet, integrated, natural. Not men who talk loudly, but men whose silence carries meaning. Not men who chase attention, but men who command respect without needing validation. That is masculine evolution. And that is what shifts her attraction from curiosity to desire. Younger men often equate masculinity with dominance or confidence, but a younger woman can sense the difference between external performance and internal power. Performance is loud. Evolution is calm. Performance wants approval. Evolution is self-sufficient. Performance tries too hard. Evolution doesn't need to try at all. She feels this difference instantly, even if she can't articulate it. Her body knows when a man is grounded in who he is, and that groundedness becomes irresistible. An older man who has evolved beyond ego becomes magnetic because he is not in competition with anyone, not even himself. He doesn't need to prove his worth. He doesn't need to convince her of his value. He doesn't need to showcase strength. He embodies it. She can sense that he has lived enough life to know what matters and what doesn't. He's not chasing validation, approval, or superficial admiration. He's chasing clarity, purpose, peace. And those qualities shape a presence that younger men rarely carry. Women are drawn to that evolved energy because it creates emotional stability, but it also creates something deeper, a sense of direction. She can feel that he knows himself. And a man who knows himself automatically knows how to lead, how to guide, how to choose wisely, how to love without losing himself. Masculine evolution is about alignment, not aggression. And alignment is what a woman's intuition responds to. When she's around a man who has evolved, she doesn't feel the chaotic energy of immaturity. She doesn't feel the unpredictability of someone who hasn't learned emotional discipline. She doesn't feel the insecurity of someone who interprets her strength as a threat. She feels steadiness. She feels assurance. She feels the kind of grounded confidence that doesn't collapse under pressure. And that emotional reliability becomes the root of her attraction. An evolved man doesn't take things personally. He doesn't internalize her emotions as attacks. He doesn't turn disagreements into battles for dominance. He doesn't need to win. He wants to understand. He doesn't need to control. He knows how to collaborate. He doesn't fear vulnerability. He recognizes it as strength. And that emotional intelligence makes him a rare breed, because most men are still trying to outrun their own shadows, not understand them. This is why younger women speak differently about older men who carry real masculine evolution. They don't say he's older. They say he's calm. They say he's steady. They say he listens. They say he understands. They say he makes them feel safe without being controlling. They say he makes them feel seen without being needy. They say he gives them peace without asking for anything in return. That emotional generosity is a sign of evolution. And that evolution is what creates profound attraction. Younger men usually react from insecurity, but evolved men respond from awareness. And that awareness creates a psychological environment where the woman feels free to be her full feminine self. She doesn't need to shrink herself. She doesn't need to hide her emotions. She doesn't need to walk on eggshells. She doesn't need to constantly reassure him. She doesn't have to manage his ego or softness. She can just be, because he knows how to hold his own emotional center. A man who has evolved doesn't fear strong women. He doesn't feel threatened by her emotions or her intelligence or her ambition. Instead, he welcomes it because he's strong enough internally to handle depth without feeling overshadowed. His masculinity isn't fragile, it's secure, and that secure masculinity gives her space to flourish. A younger woman also feels drawn to the older man because evolution refines masculine energy. It sharpens it. It makes it cleaner, clearer, more intentional. He moves with purpose instead of impulse. He loves with awareness instead of attachment. He communicates with clarity instead of confusion. He makes decisions with thoughtfulness instead of fear. This refinement is what makes his presence feel more mature, more attractive, more trustworthy. Real masculine evolution isn't about age. It's about awakening. It's about a man who has confronted his flaws, healed his childhood wounds, rebuilt his character, and developed emotional mastery. Younger women aren't choosing older men because they're older. They're choosing them because they have become men in the fullest definition of the word. And let's be honest, in a world filled with emotional immaturity, inconsistency, and insecurity disguised as masculinity, an evolved man becomes a rarity that stands out, a rarity she can't ignore, a rarity she would rather choose, even if society doesn't understand her choice. Women don't choose evolution for excitement, they choose it for emotional alignment. They choose it because it feels healthier, stronger, safer. They choose it because masculine evolution creates a relationship where she doesn't have to lose herself to love someone else. She will always gravitate toward the man who has evolved into a version of himself that is grounded, intentional, self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and spiritually aligned. Because masculine evolution transforms everything. The way he loves, the way he listens, the way he leads, the way he touches, the way he protects, the way he communicates, and the way he connects. At the end of the day, she's not attracted to age. She's attracted to the evolution age often creates. And that evolution becomes the kind of masculinity she refuses to live without. That is the truth most people misinterpret. That is the difference she feels. That is the man she chooses. Because an evolved man doesn't just attract a woman, he elevates her. And once she experiences that, she won't settle for anything less.